More than 25,000 workers died building a single waterway across Panama, a canal that divided a continent and cut 8,000 miles off the voyage between two oceans. The French tried first and buried 22,000 of their own before financial collapse ended the effort. What the United States inherited in 1904 was not just an unfinished canal, it was a graveyard demanding an entirely different answer. On February 1, 1881, the French enterprise officially launched, riding the wave of Ferdinand de Lesseps' triumph at the Suez Canal. Lesseps convinced more than 100,000 small investors to back a sea-level design, projecting a cost of 658 million francs, roughly $132 million, and less than a decade of work. He assumed Panama was a larger version of Suez, underestimating the wet tropical terrain. Crews encountered rain-saturated volcanic ash, clay, and unstable shale in the central highlands, causing excavation walls to collapse back into the trench. The seasonal flooding of the Chagres River repeatedly swept away machinery and halted excavation, while yellow fever and malaria decimated the workforce long before the mosquito transmission cycle was understood. Even the purchase of the Panama Railroad for $25 million failed to solve the logistical bottleneck. By 1888, soaring expenses and minimal progress destroyed investor confidence, forcing the company into bankruptcy in February 1889. The subsequent Panama scandal exposed widespread bribery of French politicians, leaving a bankrupt enterprise, an abandoned, disease-ridden trench, and a clear warning that any future attempt would require a complete redesign. Following the Spanish-American War, the United States sought rapid naval transit between the oceans. In November 1901, the Hay-Ponce-Fote Treaty removed a British veto over an American canal. Though the Walker Commission favored Nicaragua, the French liquidators offered their Panamanian assets for $40 million, shifting Washington's focus. In June 1902, the Spooner Act authorized President Theodore Roosevelt to purchase the French assets if he could reach an agreement with Colombia. The resulting Hay-Herran Treaty of January 1903 offered Colombia $10 million, but the Colombian Senate rejected it on August 12th over sovereignty concerns. Panamanian separatists declared independence on November 3, 1903, backed by American warships that blocked Colombian forces. Days later, Washington recognized the Republic. On November 18th, French engineer Philippe Bunau-Varilla signed a treaty granting the United States control of a 10-mile-wide canal zone in perpetuity. Panama received $10 million and an annuity of $250,000. The United States bought the French assets for $40 million in April 1904, taking possession of the zone in May, leaving the physical challenge of the terrain still ahead. The American plan began with a total rejection of the French sea-level design. In 1905, Chief Engineer John F. Stevens assessed the terrain and concluded that cutting a sea-level trench through the Continental Divide was impossible. Stevens championed a lock-based design centered on a massive artificial reservoir. To make this plan work, he reorganized the Panama Railroad, turning it into a continuous conveyor belt to haul away millions of tons of blasted rock and earth. Under this new design, the unpredictable Chagres River was tamed rather than bypassed. Workers constructed the Gatun Dam, impounding the river to create Gatun Lake at 85 feet above sea level. This artificial lake became the main transit corridor across the isthmus, using water itself as the lifting mechanism. The locks functioned as water-filled elevators. To transit, a ship passed into a concrete chamber. Water then flowed in or out by gravity alone, without any pumps, raising or lowering the vessel to the next level. The system required 3 lock complexes: Gatun on the Atlantic side, and Pedro Miguel and Miraflores on the Pacific. Each of the original lock chambers measured 1,000 feet long and 110 feet wide. When Stevens resigned in 1907, Colonel George W. Goethals took control, coordinating the construction of the dam, the locks, and the massive excavation of the Culebra Cut into a single operation. The Culebra Cut stretched 8.75 miles through the unstable Continental Divide, where the earth resisted excavation at every turn. In May 1907, a massive gravity slide displaced hundreds of thousands of cubic yards of wet clay and buried steam shovels. In June 1913, a deformation slide pushed millions of cubic yards back into the cut. Even in May 1914, just months before completion, Another major slide threatened the opening schedule. Rather than digging deeper vertical walls, engineers adapted by regrading the slopes, installing extensive drainage, and building rock-fill buttresses. By the time the project ended, crews had excavated approximately 268 million cubic yards of material. The true engineering achievement lay not in simply removing the earth, but in permanently holding back the shifting hillsides. Behind the heavy machinery lay a stark human cost. Historical records estimate that more than 22,000 workers died during the French attempt, and another 5,600 lost their lives during the American phase. Laborers faced extreme heat, landslides, dynamite explosions, and unsanitary barracks. But the most lethal threats came from microscopic sources. Yellow fever and malaria devastated the camps. These were vector-borne diseases, illnesses carried and transmitted to humans by living organisms, in this case, mosquitoes. During the French era, transmission was not understood, causing medical efforts to fail. In 1881, Cuban physician Carlos Finley hypothesized that the Aedes aegypti mosquito carried yellow fever, an idea widely dismissed at the time. In 1900, a U.S. Army commission led by Walter Reed confirmed Finley's theory in Cuba. Armed with this proof, Chief Sanitary Officer William C. Gorgas launched a systematic sanitation campaign in Panama in 1904. His teams drained swamps, cleared standing water, fumigated buildings, and installed window screens. These measures disrupted mosquito breeding, causing yellow fever to disappear and malaria rates to drop low enough to sustain construction. Yet, medical progress existed alongside systemic inequality. The workforce operated under a rigid segregation system. White American and European workers on the gold roll received higher pay, better housing, and superior medical care. In contrast, Caribbean and West Indian laborers on the silver roll performed the most hazardous physical work, lived in crowded barracks, and suffered the highest rates of disease and death. The sanitation campaign successfully preserved the workforce, but it did so within a deeply unequal labor regime. By late 1913, the Gatun Dam and the artificial lake system reached completion, filling the massive basin that would carry ships across the Continental Divide. In the opening months of 1914, workers cleared the remaining debris from the Culebra Cut and tested the massive steel lock gates. On August 15, 1914, the cargo ship SS Ancon made the first official transit through the canal, completing the journey from ocean to ocean in just 9 hours. The opening occurred only weeks after the outbreak of World War I in Europe, immediately validating the canal's strategic purpose. By saving approximately 8,000 miles on voyages between the American coasts, the waterway allowed the United States to shift its naval fleets between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans in days rather than months. This mobility consolidated American hegemony in the Caribbean and Latin America. The 10-year American effort cost approximately $375 million, leaving the United States in possession of a sovereign enclave that split the new Republic of Panama in half. For decades, this foreign administration of the Canal Zone fueled deep-seated local resentment. Tensions persisted until September 1977, when the signing of the Torrijos-Carter treaties established a schedule for the gradual transfer of the waterway. On December 31, 1999, Panama assumed full sovereignty over the canal. Under the terms of the transfer, the canal operates under a strict principle of permanent neutrality, ensuring equal access for global commerce, though the geopolitical and human cost of its creation remains a permanent part of its legacy. Today, this neutral waterway handles 6% of global maritime commerce. Yet, the physical division of the continent remains a monument to both technological mastery and human exploitation. The canal stands as a permanent reminder that global progress always carries a human cost. Share your perspective in the comments.